Hey guys, Stay Patient here and welcome back to the 2016 Trophy Awards. Now we've already taken a look at the easiest and fastest platinums this year, and those are great for giving us a trophy boost and sort of slotting in between the bigger games that we're playing. But the majority of our time is probably spent on AAA titles, so that's what we're going to be taking a look at today. The 15 easiest AAA platinums from 2016. Now of course the term AAA has become rather ambiguous over recent years, but for the sake of this video we're going to use it to refer to those slightly higher profile retail releases. And all the games in this list have been given a 3 out of 10 or lower in the difficulty voting threads on PlayStationTrophies.org. I think it's important for that to be the case, because I don't want to just let you know which games I found easy. We all have different skill sets and different preferences when it comes to genres, so I wanted to make sure that all of these games are ones that are considered easy by the wide majority of gamers today. That does mean, however, that there will be some games that you personally found easy, but maybe have a higher difficulty average based on other people struggling a bit more than you did. But we'd love to hear about those games in the comments, of course. On that note, you may remember that this week during the Trophy Hunters update video, I asked you guys to let us know what your favourite platinum from this year was and why. Now I'm going to actually share some of those comments. There were loads that I really enjoyed reading, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to stick to those that sort of relate to the games that are in this list. There are lots relating to other games, and I do recommend you guys jump across to that video. It was the episode from the 25th of December. So go ahead and read all those comments, and if you want to continue leaving your impressions of your favourite platinums or the ones you found easiest on this video, then we always enjoy reading them, so feel free. The winning comment from that exercise though is going to win my first ever giveaway, which is Metro Redux, quite a cheap simple game, but it has 2 easy platinums, so that's going to be sent out to someone today. But with that in mind, we are going to dive straight into the top 15 easiest AAA platinums from 2016 with some opinions from myself and of course some of your opinions thrown in as well. The Italian developers at Milestone are known for their motorbike racing franchises such as the yearly MotoGP games and the Ride series. Most of their releases are generally considered to have fairly easy platinums, if you can get around the glitches that have become synonymous with the developer. The easiest of all their games is this year's MXGP 2, which focuses on off-road trial bike events and is sat at a reasonably respectable 65% on Metacritic. This sequel to MXGP, which was itself an easy platinum, is even more straightforward than its predecessor, with most people on PlayStationTrophies.org branding it a 1 or 2 out of 10 when it comes to difficulty and estimating a 15-hour completion time. Those of you that played the first game in the series back in 2014 will be happy to hear that the online trophies are even simpler to earn this time around. In true Milestone fashion though, there is a glitch, or at least a lack of explanation, when it comes to one of the longest winded trophies in the game. So, as well as checking the trophy guide linked in the description, I also recommend you read through the second thread, which will ensure you're able to avoid any unnecessary extra time being added on to your platinum playthrough. Sometimes games come along that don't review particularly well but get a better response from the general public, and the reputation of those games often increases over time. As an example, Mafia II, which is one of the last gen games that many remember most fondly, only has a 75% on Metacritic based on the reviews it received upon its release back in 2010. Well, Mafia III, which averages just 68%, may well be following its prequel's lead in that regard, as it already seems to be receiving a lot of love from at least portions of the gaming community, despite the rather average reviews. The game was praised for its story and characters, so if those things are important to you, then be sure to check it out. But bear in mind that despite being an easy platinum at a 3 out of 10 difficulty rating, it is a relatively long one. It requires at least 2 playthroughs and will take somewhere around 40 hours, while having the potential to be considerably more or less than that depending on your approach. This could sound like good news to those of you that enjoy games with plenty of content, but one of the negative points highlighted by reviewers such as Angry Joe was the repetitive nature of a lot of that content. So take that into consideration when deciding whether you want to spend a few dozen hours with this game. This generation has seen the hype and build-up for video games go through the roof. And although a high level of anticipation can at times lead to more launch day sales, it can also result in the game's reputation being destroyed if it doesn't live up to people's insanely high expectations, or deliver everything the developers led us to believe it would. Watch Dogs, Destiny and The Division come to mind, but the worst case so far has been No Man's Sky, the game everyone loves to hate despite its surprisingly respectable 71% on Metacritic. Maybe if it had just released with no hype or fanfare, people might have been pleasantly surprised. But as it turned out, the excitement surrounding the game during the development process contributed greatly to its downfall. Which begs the question, what's more important, launch day sales or a good reputation? It may be too little too late, but thankfully Hello Games have put a lot of time and effort into finally releasing a sizable patch that adds many new features to the game, fleshing it out and bringing it more in line with what people were hoping for. So those of you starting your journey to Platinum now will have a much more enjoyable experience. The trophies have been given a 2 out of 10 for difficulty, but the time requirement is a bit tougher to gauge. You could technically have them done in as little as 20 hours if you focused on them and nothing else while getting lucky along the way with some of the more luck-based trophies. But it could also take you anywhere around 50 hours, so don't play this one if you're after a guaranteed quick platinum, but if it's your kind of game then you'll be pleased to hear it is at least very easy. Next up we have another racing game from Milestone, one involving 4 wheels this time. The Milan-based studio took over development of the WRC franchise back in 2010, but it was passed on to a new team yet again in 2013. They obviously enjoyed their time working on the series though, because after a couple of years focusing solely on bike-based games, they returned to rally in 2016 with SEBASTIEN LOEB. It may not be up to the standard of this year's superb dirt rally, but as you may know, the dirt trophies are very tough indeed. So if you're looking for a game with the kind of intense off-road action that this genre is known for, but with a platinum that is attainable for most skill levels, then SEBASTIEN LOEB Rally Evo is the one for you. And at a 71% on Metacritic, I'm sure it won't disappoint fans of the motorsport. Its average difficulty rating is a 3 out of 10, which means it's not a game you can sleepwalk through, so if racing games are well outside your comfort zone, then I wouldn't recommend taking this on just for the trophies. If you're a fan of racing games though and decide to platinum SEBASTIEN LOEB, it should take you between 25 and 30 hours to do so, give or take. Ubisoft finally put some effort into trying something new with their popular open-world FPS series this year, with reasonably successful results. Far Cry has always been a strong franchise, but was in danger of slipping into being a repetitive annualized series like some of their other IPs. The third game was when it really got things right, and so, typical of Ubisoft, they stuck to an almost identical formula for Far Cry 4, which was still a good game but not especially original. They obviously learned from their Assassin's Creed series though, and realised they needed to switch things up sooner this time around. So earlier this year we got Far Cry Primal, set in a prehistoric world of mammoths, saber-toothed tigers and hostile tribes, all of which you face off against using spears, clubs and any manner of melee and ranged weapons typical of the setting. The game has an average review score of 76% on Metacritic, which is lower than the 2 previous titles in the series, but still a respectable score, and I'm all for developers trying new things. Trophy-wise, it's a nice easy 2 out of 10 when it comes to difficulty, and will take roughly somewhere around 25 hours on average. I'm not going to include any Telltale games from this year because they're predominantly thought of as downloadable titles, so they wouldn't fit in with the interpretation of the term AAA that we're implementing for the sake of this video. I am, however, going to be cheeky and include one of the LEGO releases. We all know the LEGO games are easy, but the reason I wanted to include LEGO Star Wars The Force Awakens is partly because the subject matter is so big right now since the return of Star Wars to the big screen, but mostly due to the fact that it's a considerably faster platinum than most of the other recent LEGO titles. With the exception of the LEGO Movie, the majority of them have been relatively long drawn-out affairs, which is great for fans of the franchise because they've provided a nice lot of content. If you're after an amusing and fun platinum that isn't overly time-consuming though, which is especially handy if you're playing with your kids, then you'll be happy to hear that The Force Awakens only takes around 20 hours for the average player. And of course, as always, it's a 2 out of 10 in difficulty, but is considered to be even more straightforward than the average LEGO game. I've always shied away from the Disney Infinity and Skylanders games, being put off by the high price of the initial investment itself and assuming that the purchase of multiple extra toys would be required to earn all the trophies. Well, this year we got Skylanders Imaginators, which is quite expensive as expected, but can usually be found for a much more reasonable price if you shop around. I was able to grab the starter pack from Amazon for just £24.99, so hopefully that price is still available for you guys if you're looking to pick this up. Which you dads especially may well want to, considering its very respectable 80% Metacritic score. Being able to spend time with the kids while earning trophies is the ultimate in killing two birds with one stone. And the good news is that the starter pack itself is enough to platinum the game. No extra purchases are necessary. There aren't any voting threads on PlayStationTrophies.org for some reason, but one of the forum users, Tesseract, has posted his thoughts. He's given it a 2 out of 10 for difficulty and claims it will take us less than 20 hours to platinum, and based on the PSNprofiles.com stats, I'm inclined to take his word for it. To my knowledge, none of the other Skylanders games have received DLC trophies, so hopefully the starter pack is all we'll ever need to earn and retain a 100% completion rating. I've always loved the humorous and fun world of Plants vs Zombies, a franchise that started life as a simple but engaging tower defense game and evolved into a fully realised online shooter. And it seems I'm not the only one, as this year's Garden Warfare 2 has a very decent rating of 81% on Metacritic. This co-op and competitive third-person experience could be summed up as Battlefield for kids, with its variety of classes, fairly large-scale battles, and multiple ways of racking up points beyond the basic kills and assists. But what it does so well is that it's not only suitable for all ages, but appeals to them all as well. It's easy for kids to get into without patronising them, and is engaging enough to be a lot of fun for adults too. The trophies are simple enough to be considered a 3 out of 10 in difficulty, with some involving just playing the game until they pop, and others being more specific but boostable by yourself using 2 controllers if need be. There are some luck-based trophies which could come quickly or take quite a while, and as a result the estimated completion time is over 75 hours, but your personal experience could be drastically different and most likely quicker than that rather high average on the voting thread. There are some DLC trophies too, the good news being that the DLC itself is free, but the bad news being that the trophies involve waiting around for certain events to be available before you can earn them, as well as boasting a higher level of difficulty than anything in the main game. It's worth having this game on the go in the background though, as it's easy to dive back into after not playing for a while, and is just a ton of fun. Number 7 on our list was a popular choice amongst all you viewers when asked to choose your favourite platinums this year. Ryan Foray says, I am picking Final Fantasy XV. I've been a long-time fan of the series and have waited, like everyone, a long time for this one. Square Enix have been known to put rather punishing trophies in some of their previous games that make getting the plat a chore, so earning the plat in around 80 hours without a massive grind was fantastic. I loved the game and had a blast every hour of playing this, especially after a year of slogging through some pretty bad easy games. You see, Final Fantasy XV is in some ways one of the most anticipated games of all time, in the sense that it had kind of been in development for over 10 years. Back in 2006 we were introduced to Noctis and the then newly announced Final Fantasy Versus 13. The project eventually ended up becoming its own fully fledged title, aka Final Fantasy XV, as opposed to being part of the much maligned 13 series from the PS3 era. Even recently it's gone through changes. The gameplay from the episode Dusky demo sported overly simplified combat, which led to my expectations dropping ahead of the game's release. Thankfully they added some more actual gameplay elements to the combat, making it much more enjoyable, while still retaining the accessibility they were going for. After all, as stated when you load the game up, this is a Final Fantasy for fans and newcomers alike. Despite the extremely long build-up to the game's release and the high level of expectation among the fans, it has arrived to a widely positive response, with an 82% on Metacritic and even more love from the general gaming community. It also has one of the easier and faster platinums out of all the Final Fantasies, which is of course a very relative term as the series is known for its long games. It has a 3 out of 10 in difficulty, with only a long-winded endgame boss battle really providing any level of challenge. And although the average estimated completion time is 50 to 75 hours, it can be polished off quicker than that if you keep all the accumulative trophies in mind from the very start. Next up, we have another racing sim, this time from Codemasters, who are widely considered the pros of the genre, but have been a little up and down with their more recent releases, specifically those from this particular series. But in 2016, they finally got their slightly failing F1 franchise back on track with one of the best track racing sims this generation. Scoring an 82% on Metacritic is quite an accomplishment for a racing game based on one particular discipline such as this, and for us fans of the genre, it's exactly what we needed. Its average difficulty rating sits at a 3 out of 10, but it's not a walk in the park if you lack experience when it comes to these types of games. It's also easier, not to mention much more fun, if you have a steering wheel and pedals. If you're looking to buy one so you can get more into racing sims, just make sure you choose a wheel that's supported on the PS4. The estimated completion time sits at anywhere between 25 and 50 hours. You can keep it at the lower end of that timescale or potentially even less if you spend time calculating points and mathematically planning everything down to a T to limit the number of seasons you need to complete. But it's an authentic and fun game to play, so having to complete 2 or 3 seasons shouldn't be a hardship. Personally, I didn't bother stressing to work out the absolute quickest route. With racing sims like this, I'm just happy to sit back and enjoy the ride, plugging away at the trophies bit by bit between other games. I never thought I'd be saying this after the rather generic first game in the series, but the 5th highest rated AAA release this year with an easy platinum was Watch Dogs 2, which scores a very nice 83% on Metacritic. Along with Titanfall 2 and another game that'll crop up before the end of the video, this is among several of this year's sequels to outshine its predecessor but sell considerably less copies. It looks as though the gaming public are wising up after so many disappointments this generation and are no longer diving into pre-order hyped games so readily. Another reason for these lower sales figures is likely the huge number of AAA games that have released in quick succession over the last few months, quite contrary to the relative drought we were experiencing back when Watch Dogs 1 released. This open-world driving, free-running and hacking-based game is considered to be just a 2 out of 10 when it comes to difficulty, with around a 20 to 25 hour time requirement. So it should be perfectly manageable for the majority of you, whatever your skill level and however much free time you have. Don't worry though, there is much more to do in the world of Watch Dogs 2 beyond just earning the trophies, so you won't be disappointed if you're hoping for a package containing plenty of content. On that note, Rambo's Corner commented saying, "My favourite platinum from this year was definitely Watch Dogs 2. It was really a refreshing feeling compared to the first one, and I got to the point of not wanting the game to end." If you need a plumber, I'm afraid you'll have to call Nintendo, but we're proud that everyone's favourite mechanic calls PlayStation his home, and he appeared on PS4 this year for the first time. Here's what some of you guys had to say regarding everyone's current favourite PlayStation mascot. Robert Morgan says, "I love platform games, so my favourite platinum this year was Ratchet Clank. I was laughing my head off all the way through it." Neil's comment reads, "I think I only got 3 platinums this year, but my favourite was definitely Ratchet Clank. You had to play the game multiple times to achieve the platinum, but that was no chore as the game was so much fun to play. Absolutely brilliant game with brilliant varied trophies, my favourite platinum and game this year." Being cheaper than your usual AAA titles, you may not think of Ratchet Clank as a AAA game, but it does deserve to be considered as such, especially with its incredible average review score of 85% on Metacritic. This is how remasters should be done. It feels recognisable yet fresh. Every one of the main Ratchet & Clank releases have been hugely enjoyable, with excellent shooting and platforming mechanics, a great sense of humour for all ages, and a wealth of crazy, unique and outright fun weapons to play around with. They've improved incrementally over the years though, especially when it comes to controls, and this year's re-release of the first game in the series is the culmination of all that tweaking and polishing, making it feel like a brand new game built from the ground up for PS4. And did I mention it looks stunning? Especially on the PS4 Pro, it blew me away the first time I saw it in all its 4K HDR glory. As expected, this gets a 2 out of 10 for difficulty, although it does have one hoverboard race related trophy that presents a slight challenge for some. It's not that hard though, with a bit of practice you'll crack it. They've also streamlined the game, not adding any of the unnecessary padding other titles from the franchise have had, which leads to it being a quicker plat than most of the previous outings at around 15 hours. With it being more focused this time around though, they've managed to cram a whole lot of fun into that short period of time, making this a must buy, especially as it can now be picked up for a very reasonable price. In third place, we have the follow-up to 2012's multiple Game of the Year winner Dishonored, an unknown new IP at the time. But despite the sequel receiving more marketing and having an established reputation after such an awesome first outing, its early sales figures ended up lagging behind its predecessors just like Watch Dogs 2. Those of you who enjoyed the first game will be pleased to hear from Statform, who says, "My favourite platinum this year was Dishonored 2. After buying the collector's edition of the game, I was a little scared it would pale in comparison to the first game, one of my favourite games of all time, but it was thoroughly enjoyable. Managed to platinum it 5 days after release, and it made my 6th platinum of all time, so very much a highlight for this year." Hopefully it'll pick up steam as more people become aware of this still fairly new franchise, and it's bound to if they happen to stumble across its incredible average review score of 88% on Metacritic. This is one of those games that gives you a lot of choice and freedom when deciding how to approach each area. A bit like Deus Ex, but even more so thanks to the variety of different powers you have at your disposal, all of which open up a wealth of new possibilities, from all-out aggression to complete undetected stealth. Its average difficulty rating is a 3 out of 10, but the length of time it'll take you, and how difficult you'll personally find it to be, really depend on your approach. To get the most out of it, I'd recommend going in blind for your first run-through of the game. There are multiple trophies that involve an entire playthrough though, and if you want to get it done quickly, then you can try and group up as many of those trophies as possible, but that will likely add more difficulty into the equation. If you tackle them individually or in smaller groups, then it'll be a bit easier on you, but require more time. With this in mind, having taken a look at the voting thread and the comments therein, it seems you'll likely need somewhere between 25 and 40 hours. Where you sit on that scale will of course depend on whether you're focused on enjoying the game or mainlining through the trophies, and on how many playthroughs you decide to split the trophies between. Those of you that enjoy playing games without the use of guides will be pleased to hear Ash Redding's comment. "Best plat for me, Dishonored 2. I love the franchise and never got the plat on PS3 for the first one, so with my anticipation of the second one I was definitely gonna attempt the plat. I bought the collector's edition, and after 3 playthroughs I fully enjoyed the game and was really pleased I nailed it, and without the use of guides. The game is fantastic." Surprisingly enough, in second place we have one of the regular sequels to one of the military first-person shooter franchises. When it comes to this oversaturated genre, EA have had a very good year, with both Titanfall 2 and Battlefield 1 receiving a lot of praise due to being genuinely great experiences. The Battlefield games are always enjoyable thanks to their large-scale, more tactical online gameplay, but they have become a little predictable and the single-player campaigns are generally rather poor. This year though, DICE have shaken things up by reverting back to a World War I theme. This has led to a whole new style of weapons and vehicles to master in online play, as well as a much more heartfelt story for the campaign. In fact, the single-player portion of the game involves several smaller, self-contained stories. The brevity of each one, along with the fact that they're set amidst one of the worst tragedies in human history, allow for each of these tales to be a lot more personal and meaningful when compared to a typical FPS narrative, most of which are too futuristic to be relatable. This slightly new approach to the long-running franchise has resulted in an average review score of 88% for Battlefield 1. A lot of you don't like online trophies, but for some games such as EA's recent big releases, the online is the most enjoyable part. So after being disappointed that Titanfall 2 didn't really require any online play to earn the platinum, I was glad to see that Battlefield 1 does. And the great thing is that the online trophies are very simple and really just require you to spend time playing it, making them enjoyable and relaxing to earn. The overall difficulty is a 3 out of 10, and the majority of the relatively low 20 to 30 hour time requirement will be spent in the multiplayer. The game that wins the award for the highest rated easy AAA Platinum from 2016 probably won't come as a surprise, especially considering the fact that more of you guys chose Uncharted 4 as your favourite Platinum this year than any other game. Despite its average review score sitting at a massive 93%, I personally didn't rate it quite as highly as the rest of the world seemed to. I felt it was lacking a big memorable set piece, something we've come to expect since the epic train, plane and boat sequences from Uncharted 2 and 3. With that being said, it looks stunning and was still a great game full of fan service and one that wrapped up the saga's story and character arcs really well, as pointed out by all your comments. So let's remind ourselves why Drake's final outing is so beloved by checking out what you guys had to say about this landmark title. Eric Perez says, my favourite game to platinum this year was Uncharted 4. It's an easy plat and the game is a masterpiece. The trophy list has great diversity, they're never easy nor hard. The game is such an emotional journey from start to finish. Seeing Nathan Drake for maybe the last time is kinda sad, but playing this game and finishing it twice truly shows me how much Naughty Dog loves this series and the characters. It's the best way to finish an awesome series on a very high note. Damon Corderman's comment reads, my favourite plat this year was Uncharted 4. It's my first experience with Uncharted and I loved every second of it. It was only the second plat I've ever gotten. I decided to earn some of the stealth trophies during the speedrun, and the feeling of beating the game by just a few minutes was one of the most satisfying I had ever experienced, and it kinda kept me interested in trophy hunting. Brett, whose surname I'm not going to attempt to pronounce, says, Uncharted 4 was without doubt the most fun I had chasing a platinum this year. The level of detail and narrative nuance put into the game from Naughty Dog was an incredible achievement, an amazing final game for one of gaming's most charismatic characters. The trophies were excellent too, I thought, enough there to keep it interesting but not ridiculous by any stretch. Also one of the best trophies of the year, referencing the stage demo incident at E3 last year. If you don't know what Brett's referring to there, check out the stage fright trophy in the game. It shows a wonderful attitude and sense of humour from Naughty Dog, one of the world's most beloved developers. Now the only reason this game's inclusion in the list may surprise some of you is because depending on how you play it, crushing difficulty can be a lot harder than it was in previous games. That's because this time, rather than waiting and finding out that the gaming community have discovered a glitch that gives them access to cheats during their crushing playthrough, Naughty Dog decided to increase the basic difficulty but balance it out by openly giving us legitimate cheats we can use without requiring an exploit. That makes this the easiest Uncharted Platinum at a 3 out of 10 average difficulty rating, and despite being quite a long game, it'll only take you 20 or so hours depending on whether you use the available glitches to drastically increase the speed at which you obtain the speed run and accuracy based trophies. The winning comment for the giveaway is another Uncharted 4 related one that, along with all the rest of your comments, helped improve my opinion of the game by reminding me that Drake's final excursion was mostly about fan service and wrapping up the story of a group of characters we've grown to love. And his openly admitting the emotion it brought out of him takes me back to the multiple occasions I've welled up as the result of a video game, the beautiful form of entertainment that is misunderstood by so many people. That winning comment from Jack's World reads, my favourite platinum this year was Uncharted 4. I had a great, albeit slightly frustrating time getting it, and as my favourite game series of all time, the finale of it needed to be savoured. It took me a while, but I was taking my time, exploring everything and making the most of my final adventure in the shoes of Nathan Drake. When it popped and I saw the name of it, one last time, I got goosebumps and almost teared up. So congratulations to Jack's World. If you'd like to send me your address, I'll send you this copy of Metro Redux with a nice couple of easy platinums for you to add to your collection. Of course, it wasn't necessarily the best comment that won, but it was the one that I found spoke to me personally the most. I want to say a big thank you for all of your comments once again, and keep them coming. It's been a lot of fun reading them. Some of them will actually be showing up in future videos from the 2016 Trophy Awards. Next up, we're going to be focusing on the easiest free platinums, and then also, if I have time, the easiest remasters or re-releases. So stay tuned for them, they'll probably be arriving in the new year. So I want to say a huge thank you guys for all your support during 2016. And I'm going to pop on screen some links here if you want to check out the weekly Trophy Hunters update show or the other top 10s of the easiest platinums across different categories. Go ahead and check out that content now. And I look forward to seeing you for the rest of the 2016 Trophy Awards. But for now, guys, thank you very much for a great year once again. And let's hope for another awesome 12 months of games and trophies in 2017. I'll see you then.